Welcome to week 2. So as we move through the course, we're going to focus on how operations management and healthcare intertwine. And so when we think about healthcare, there's often this term called the iron triangle, which is access, cost, and quality. It's at the core of healthcare. And so what we should understand is that when it comes to the United States healthcare, that we have to make a major improvement in quality, reduction in cost, and expansion of access. So today we know that the U.S. healthcare system has a significant problem with medical errors, and that medical errors exist because of a lack of quality control. So studies have indicated on the low side that 98,000 people die every year in the United States healthcare system due to preventable medical errors. There are some studies that put that up as high as 400,000 people a year. So if you think about that in terms of any other industry, we would never tolerate another industry having that many people die due to preventable medical errors year in and year out. And then on top of that are the people who are injured but don't die, which you could probably multiply the number by 5 or 10. So when we talk about what needs to be fixed, quality is at the top of the list. The next issue clearly is that our healthcare system is too expensive. On average, we're twice as expensive as the rest of the industrialized world. And this is causing a major problem for the country, particularly as our population ages. And we know that most people consume the lion's share of their healthcare in their senior years. So we have to figure out a way to reduce the cost structure and the cost drivers of healthcare. And then third, but certainly not last, is this idea that we are the only industrialized country in the world that does not have universal health care. And so as a result, we have an estimated 40 to 50 million Americans who are without health insurance, which means that they're probably not accessing health care at the right time, if at all. And so we have this three-headed monster that goes back to the triangle, the iron triangle: access, cost, and quality. They all need major improvements. And so what we're going to focus on this course in particular is how do we address the quality issue? And by addressing the quality issue, that we should simultaneously address at least portions of the cost issue. The access issue is a much larger issue. It's a political issue. It's a societal value issue. And so I'm not going to really address it in this course per se, but I think we need to be aware that it is a major problem and something that we should be concerned about. So when we fail to have quality control, things happen. So you may have noticed this past weekend that Hawaii was set into a panic mode because there was a false alarm about nuclear missiles having been launched. And as it turns out, fortunately, it was a mistake on the part of the people who managed the alarm system, but really an unacceptable quality breakdown. And so quality breakdowns happen in every industry. This particular case, we probably were minutes away from a nuclear war, which God help the world if that ever happened. So, but it's not, we see it in every industry. We saw it in the natural gas industry and the oil industry when BP's well exploded in the Gulf Coast, and we had millions of gallons of oil go into the coast and cause a catastrophe that will last with us for generations. And then it happens in healthcare a lot, but there's one case in particular I want to point your attention to, which was the breakdown in quality at the New England Compounding Center, which was here in Massachusetts. Happened in 2013. So it happens that there are several MCPHS PharmD graduates that work there, and there was a breakdown in quality. And what we often see when there's a quality breakdown is because there's a compromise, and the compromise is often that that the organization has decided to chase revenue or profit as opposed to stay focused on quality and safety. So the best run companies should have at the top of their pyramid of what needs to be done. It's an uncompromising commitment to quality and safety. When organizations let things like revenue or profit become their top goal, then what happens is that there's often shortcuts, we shave corners, we do other things that end up causing problems. Sometimes we get away with those problems, but sometimes they create catastrophes like we saw in the Gulf. And in the case of the New England Compounding Center, we had tens of people dying, hundreds of people with a meningitis disease, and these are all preventable errors. So the standard for quality and safety in the world is really Toyota, but even Toyota sometimes takes their eye off the ball. And so you may have recalled that Toyota had a big problem with their accelerators, and many people were hurt, and it really hurt their reputation. And really what happened was that they drifted away from the Toyota way. And so the idea here is that we not only have to talk about quality and safety, but we have to make it part of our culture, and we have to make it uncompromising and a daily ritual that we recognize, that everybody in the organization recognizes that without quality and safety, we could end up with major problems, and those problems could become catastrophes that could kill people, could put us out of business, etc. So the CDC and other organizations talk about the U.S. healthcare system. And here's some information. 2 million people get new infections in U.S. healthcare systems. As I mentioned, on the low end of things, people are estimating 98,000 people die every year due to preventable medical errors. Some studies have it as high as 400,000. What we know is that there are far too many people dying every year due to preventable medical errors. And so we're going to have to put some quality systems in place to start to reduce that and hopefully eliminate it over time. But today, we're lacking strong, focused quality in healthcare in the United States. And we have to fix that problem. That has to be our number one mission as we go into the healthcare professions. So why do we all need to understand the tools and processes to improve quality? Because it's going to allow us to have stronger and more stable organizations. And in so doing, we're going to be able to solve a big part of the iron triangle. But what also is hidden here is that as we improve quality, we often also simultaneously improve our cost structure. So when we talk about quality this semester, we're going to focus in on something called lean. I want to give you a little bit of history on lean. So there's a professor from the United States in the post-World War II era called Deming, and he develops this idea about quality management. And the U.S. doesn't initially embrace his thinking, so he goes to Japan as part of the effort to help rebuild the Japanese economy, and his ideas were embraced widely, particularly at a company by the name of Toyota, which at that point nobody has ever heard of. So Deming goes and offers 14 points of management. And you can read through the 14 points, but what you'll see is that in this 14 points, what we'll see is what comes out of that is something called the Shingo model. So the Shingo model, I have you read the Shingo handbook in this week's folder. So please read, look through that carefully, and particularly the 10 principles of Shingo. The Shingo is really lays the foundation for the Toyota production system, or the Toyota way. And the Toyota production system and Toyota way is really what we call lean in the United States. So lean in healthcare is really the basis for quality improvement in a lot of leading healthcare organizations. So we'll delve into lean in the upcoming weeks. But this week I want to focus in on recognizing that the U.S. healthcare system has a major quality problem, and that there are tools that are going to help us to figure out how we can put processes in place to help improve quality and safety in our healthcare operations. So Shingo, which is at the basis of the Toyota Production Way, and Lean really has 10 principles, and 10 principles are broken up into 4 dimensions. The 4 dimensions are cultural enablers, continuous process improvement, enterprise alignment, and then results. So under cultural enablers, we have this idea of leading with humility. So something that is a shortcoming of a lot of American leaders and managers is this idea of humility. But in the Shingo Toyota world, we really have a lot of emphasis on being humble and having respect for humanity. And so that's a big part of the cultural enablers, because it does not create the hierarchy and the limitations of communication that we often see in U.S. operations. Then there's a focus on continuous process improvement. So everything is thought of as a process. And so if I think of things as a process, then I want to have a value stream map, which we'll be talking about next week. And we want to embrace scientific thinking. So we're not going to do gut feel. We're going to use the tools and statistics that we have at our as resources, and we're going to use those as a basis to implement processes that we know can be tested. And then we're going to constantly work towards perfection. But we know that perfection is unattainable. But so what this drives us to do is constantly seek ways to get better. So perfection's the goal, but it's a goal that we don't expect to achieve, but we do expect to be able to measure our activity and to look at progress and then figure out how we can get a little bit better each and every day. And then this constancy of purpose is one of the higher level needs of the organization. And this, sometimes we call this the true north. You might think of it as the mission of the organization, but everybody should know the purpose as to why we're here and what we want to accomplish. And then we want to, all of our thinking should be aligned with the value that we're creating for the customer. So everything we do should be about the customer, not about us as managers or employees, but the customer. Okay, so I'd like you to read the Shingo model, the handbook, and then we'll use that throughout the course. And then the other thing that I've asked you to look at is the Toyota Way and the Toyota Production System. So there's several slides here. I'm not going to read through the slides. You can look through them. But when it boils down, we want to look at what the main messages of the Toyota Production System are. And I think this captures it fairly well right here in this particular slide. So one of the things that the Toyota Production System is based on is this idea of long-term thinking. So that's a